but for us, or should we get these guys to do it? Do you know what I mean? So and as you say, the pros you can show kind of, they're actually quite quantifiable, right? They're numeric, they're risk reduction, etc., etc. The main con that we kind of come up against is this concept of losing control and risk. Okay, so that our job then as a service provider is to try to mitigate that. That's our role, because as you say, the pros are sort of evident. So typically if a let's say a group treasurer is not used to this sort of structure, the sort of outsourcing concept, immediately saying approach if that's what people wish. It's often very easy to if people raise these issues, concerns, or worries or whatever, it's very easy for us to counteract them actually by both sort of third-party verification. I mentioned we're SOC 1 tested, so that takes a lot of the kind of risk element away. We're also regular.
What is that? Sorry, I don't know.
Standard operation controls. So each year we are audited by a third-party international audit firm, not for numbers, but for processes. So to make sure the things that we do are being done in a secure and safe way. So that's, everything from executing a deal to settling a deal to confirming a deal. It's a full-on process. It's a big commitment from us actually to get it done. But particularly in the US, it's an expectation of service providers. And for instance, our clients' internal audit functions would rely heavily on that audit being undertaken from a kind of a security perspective.
So that's interesting, because in my business knowledge, which is limited, very very much so, I understand outsourcing. If I just look at outsourcing typically, and if I take myself out of treasury for a second, typically you'd outsource because it's not worth it to hire someone for that process right now, until you reach the scale at which it would make sense for me to just bring this in-house, because it would actually be cheaper or whatever, right? But you didn't say that. You didn't say as of a certain size. And I think we've spoken as well beforehand. You work with big companies as well. So why is that not the case with treasury outsourcing? Why is scale not the
scale? I think, and here's the rub of it, perhaps. One person can process 1,000 invoices, right? But you need 10 people to process 10,000 invoices. Okay. Now, in treasury, one person can deal $100 million, right? But that same person could do 10 billion. so there's an element of the value gets bigger, right? But the volume doesn't necessarily get bigger. Now it doesn't. I'm being a little bit facetious. Obviously, it does.
You can be in more countries. You can have more FX to manage. You can have
exactly, and you can have more currency pairs. But it's not that exponential. You got 50,000 invoices rather than 1,000, right? It goes from 100 bank accounts to 200 bank accounts. That sort of thing. The other thing is that what we do, our clients become very comfortable with it. So if they, for instance, keep on growing, they find it difficult to justify changing what is already working. To be blunt about it,
don't fix if it isn't broken.
Like I think our clients always tell us, if we knew about we don't understand why more people don't do this, is one thing they say, and the other thing they say is, the other thing that always happens, and we love this, is that often our clients, the group treasurer will have an assistant treasurer, and the assistant treasurer will then get a job somewhere else as a group treasurer, and it's one of our best sources of clients. It's marketing at its peak. So
that means your services you provide.
Well, that's what we read into it, and we do go out of our way to get feedback on that, because we need to be providing. So it gets back to that concept, right, of the added value service that we talked about earlier on. We need to keep on pushing forward, and finding the new thing, So I mentioned, like for instance, we would have been one of the first outsourced providers to provide a turnkey netting solution, intercompany netting solution, and that's proved really popular with our clients, because it's an easy rolloutable, easily benefitable, and there's a definable, quantified financial benefit to clients of doing that, right? Um, uh, we've also developed, pretty robust forecasting and cash visibility processes. Again, using third-party tools. We'll talk about them in a while. These are things that are attractive, right? But if you look at like every year we'll do a review of all the sort of what's hot in Treasury sort of surveys that get done. So every year we'll do a review of them, and we'll ensure that our modular services are tailored towards what the requirement is. Generally, we're ahead of the curve, but we just want to make sure we're sort of there or thereabouts.
Right. I'm also conscious of the fact that previously when we asked you what activities can be outsourced and whatnot, we didn't let you finish and give us a full list. So could you just rant off what are the Treasury activities that get done that are outsourceable,
Sure.
which ones are not, and maybe which ones go into a service center? Just because I'm
fair enough. So let's just be clear about that, right? Okay. So from an outsourcing perspective, in our business, okay, and generally speaking, in the outsourced world, which I have to say is not a huge world, right? It's a kind of a boutique world in which we operate. I mentioned that there are a bundle of services that sit within kind of what we would refer to as kind of an in-house banking structure, and it doesn't, that's just an umbrella term, okay? And within that, we would see cash and liquidity management, intercompany loan management, FX risk management, cash visibility and forecasting, intercompany netting, intercompany FX programs, and then other things like perhaps bank system management, bank fees management, spot FX, those sorts of daily tasks where every day someone has to come in. They need to see what the position is in every currency. They need to position that. They need to invest it. It's those sorts of daily management of the group oil that we would often manage. The second sort of structure that we see is what we would refer to as kind of a back office accounting and systems service. Okay, so under this model, and this is actually another, it's completely different model in many ways. So under this model, rather than outsourcing a particular defined process, we're providing a sort of foundation or a fundamental level at which the Treasury function as a whole can operate. So let me give you kind of how that might look. So I think that will make more sense before I give you the sort of tasks that we do. So let's say a treasurer is sitting somewhere, and he has an assistant treasurer and two strategic analysts. Okay, now they can make all the decisions. They can do all the trading. They can execute all of their strategies within that small team of three or four people, right? But what they don't have is the infrastructure environment, the systems environment, right? They don't have the backup in terms of people who can do the settlements, the bank recs, the confirmations, issue intercompany statements, all that sort of stuff, right? And they also don't have the technical accounting support there. Okay, so they've got all the core strategic treasury stuff, sort of none of the kind of level stuff that holds it together.
So you take them from 0 to 1, like you're plug and play.
Precisely. So under those services, so if you think about it, they go, okay, well look, we want you to manage it, so they'll have access to our treasury management system. That would be the key. It's a third-party system, by the way. We use third-party systems.
Can you say which one?
Yeah, CGI Twin is the one that we use. We've worked with them for a long time. But we're agnostic to systems, to be honest. Even though we work very well with CGI Twin, it works well. We do work with other systems as well. But they will have access to the system, and that's kind of the link, right, between, traditionally they would be what we would refer to as the front office, right, and then we're providing all the back office and middle office services, and it flows all very seamlessly because we have all of the integration in place. So they'll probably trade over FXall, it'll integrate STP with the TMS. We'll manage all the Finastra sort of confirmations and all that sort of stuff, so, and then we'll produce the accounting output. So under those, what we prefer to, that's what we refer to as kind of operation outsourcing. We would do back office activities, which would be bank recs, confirmation, settlements, reporting, bank information flow and integration. So we'll take all of the data from the banks and get it into the TMS, so the front office team can have visibility of that. Then from a middle office perspective, we'll be doing kind of treasury accounting, which might be management accounts, hedge accounting, hedge documentation, general sort of reporting around the accounting, static data management, and really importantly, under most of our structures, we provide a direct STP accounting file into our client's ERP environment. So the TMS will produce a GL mapped accounting file, which will flow just on an SFTP basis straight into whatever it is, generally SAP or one of the big accounting systems. So it's kind of very seamless from that perspective. And then obviously, kind of gelling all that together is kind of the systems infrastructure. So the TMS, dealing platform, rate feeds, confirmation systems, integration with banks, integration with Swift, and importantly, as I mentioned, kind of we also have a cash forecasting system that we use, which also is great for kind of cash consolidation and reporting and stuff like that.
Okay, cool. And so what are the tasks that typically you would even advise treasury departments against outsourcing? What are those tasks? So
from a daily task perspective, there's not much really, to be honest, that can't be done, right? But the sorts of things that we would not see outsourced, to be perfectly blunt, would be funding, the management of the funding book, right? So the funding plan, the implementation of the funding plan, negotiations, all of the high level strategic elements, right? But at the end of the day, if a treasurer has agreed an RCF, there's not much value in his assistant treasurer picking up a phone and drawing down £1 million because they need it, right? Anyone could do that, right? So that's the kind of the daily operations of that can be done pretty simply on an outsourcing basis.
But the partnership side of things is the part that you wouldn't.
Relationships,
outsourced
partnerships, internal culture can be important, right? Understand and strategy development and risk appetite, they are individual to any particular organization. It could often depend on the type of organization. Most of our companies are listed companies, but we do deal with some very big privately owned companies. And generally speaking, they probably have a little more tolerance for risk, right? Because they're not reporting to the market and stuff like that. Yeah. But even within the listed companies, there can be quite a divergent attitude towards exposure risk management and their view on that. And also, strategies in relation to things like interest rate hedging, FX hedging, commodity hedging, very much driven by the business view. And whilst we're embedded in the business as much as possible, really that needs to sit in kind of a risk committee that has both business heads, treasury heads, and kind of finance heads in it. Do you know what I mean? It's not a decision that can be, or a policy that can be developed solely by Treasury in isolation, and therefore it's not really outsourceable. You need to be in the business, know the people, know the business well.
I like that. So as a treasurer, you just get to do all the fun strategic stuff, and you give the day-to-day stuff to someone else outside.
Correct. Yeah, and like to be honest, we often operate in very much a hybrid environment. Okay, so for instance, we would have a lot of US companies. Okay, that would have massive amounts of daily cash management requirements, investments, etc., domestically in the US, right? So they have a team managing that. Yet they don't want the deal. By the time they come into work, they want to know that Europe's sorted and how many dollars do they have out of Europe to mess with. And that's where we sit in. We can sit in and say, we'll manage all that, and we'll also manage the intercompany netting, and we'll always also manage the European FX, and you'll have all of that information and any of that cash available for you when you arrive in the morning. And your team can then do the sort of the finessing, and that's a very popular model, to be honest. Kind of a hybrid model, where where a corporate has recognized that they kind of need a regional treasury center somewhere, but they don't necessarily want to invest in the FTEs and the infrastructure or take on the risk of having it itself. Exactly. Yeah.
And so Ireland, my understanding of it as a hub, and we spoke to Amy Cullen about this, which I know you were with as well, where she said that, look, Ireland used to be the treasury hub of definitely Europe, if not globally, because of the tax incentives originally. And what happened over time was, because of that, you had this whole ecosystem of treasury built up there. And then out of that, even though the tax incentives are gone, it's still seen as a hub for treasury operations globally. So there's the element of you just have the expertise there. But is there also the element of just time zone wise? Is it
like to be honest,
companies, what's the consideration there? Why?
There's a couple of considerations. There's what you mentioned there, right? There's the sort of expertise. Sort of like in a global world, right? Expertise is fairly fluid, as you know. And if I look around me in Dublin, we're also the hub for Google and Meta, and the diversity within their workforce is amazing to see. It's amazing to see these people from all over the world. So that kind of labor mobility is a big thing, right? So yeah, we do have a particular kind of set of skills, but there's also companies like FDI that have just developed, right? So we have, over the years we developed skills, structures, etc., that are able to do this. But to get back to your kind of core question, what is it like? As I mentioned, we would have a significant number of US clients, right? And obviously Ireland is in an excellent place from a time zone perspective.
Can you explain that? Why is it? What benefit does a US client get to having an Irish outsource?
Well, it's more the time. Not necessarily Ireland, you know what I mean, but it's more the time zone. So we can effectively bridge the whole. Well, European time is obviously we're fine with, but we can also bridge a lot of the APAC sort of time zones if necessary, and. A lot of our clients would have significant operations in kind of in Western Europe in general, and then out into the kind of further regions of South Africa, etc., etc. So we're all we're able to manage all of the cash within those zones within cut-off times that would be quite tight actually if you were trying to manage it out of the US. In terms of getting value and getting trades away and stuff like that. So that is attractive. The other thing that's attractive, obviously, is that we're native English speakers. So everybody is able to communicate, and then
even they understand the Irish accent.
That's fair enough.
So strong statement, native English speakers.
I'll start speaking in Gaelic now, and you won't understand anything. Neither will I. And then we also have an advantage in that we're from a logistics perspective, we're easy to get to actually from the US. So there's loads of flights in and out. We have a visa clearance. We have US visa clearance within Dublin, which makes things a little bit easier. And Dublin's a great place to visit, so why wouldn't you want to have
was it highest number of pubs per capita or something like this? Isn't it something like that?
So yeah, like
super cool.
Yeah, it's it has evolved, though, I have to say. And your initial comment in that it's somewhere where people look to when they're looking at these sorts of things is because it's where people have done it before, right? And who wants to be, who was the first man to eat an oyster? You know what I mean? You kind of, there is an element of feeling safe with what is being done and what your peers are doing.
I mean, there's this. In that episode we did with Amy, we brought up a quote from Tim Cook at this time as well, which she was saying once on a conference, which was that everyone thinks China's a cheap place to manufacture iPhones, but in reality, it's not that cheap anymore at all. But what it is if you throw a shoe into a crowd, you'll hit 3 milling operators, which in the UK or Europe or wherever else,
it doesn't happen.
You would. Yeah. It doesn't happen. And it's just the expertise is built there now, even if it doesn't. And I see Ireland a bit the same way as well for Treasury. It's like, even though the tax incentives aren't there anymore because they were there once upon a time, the expertise is so much there and the knowledge is there and even the mental association, like you said about, everyone's always done it there, so it's got a brand
Yeah.
as a treasury hub. Google Meta being there definitely helps as well, and I know their treasury operations are based out of there as well for Google, especially. So these kind of things
I mean,
all
like
definitely do matter.
it's funny you should say that, because like in addition to that, we would have a lot of the European hubs for the banks here as well, and that again, you know, it's sort of a so you know our clients,
It's an ecosystem.
our clients generally speaking, they're very large global multinational organizations, and whilst we deal with probably maybe 50 or 60 different banks, like the vast majority of our interaction with banks is probably with a handful of banks, you know, the big global banks that you can probably list off, you know, and they all have a major presence here, which means that, you know, if we're working with a client on a particular structure or managing a particular structure, they're really just around the corner. We know them. You know, it makes for an environment that works well. It's what's what they refer to as kind of an ecosystem. You know, that, you know, everybody can thrive off each other, I think.